the doomed child queen who was locked away and left to die. On June 3, 1353, the sun rose over Valladolid Castle, illuminating a scene of bustling excitement. It should have been the dawn of a new era for Castile. Branca of Bourbon, a 14-year-old French princess, walked down the aisle in white silks and gold brocade, about to become queen of one of the most powerful monarchies on the Iberian Peninsula. Yet, what should have been the happiest day of her life was instead the beginning of a years-long nightmare. In just 3 days, her husband, King Peter of Castile, would publicly abandon her and imprison her in a castle, leaving her to slowly die, forgotten and humiliated. This is more than a story of an arranged marriage gone wrong. It is an account of how an innocent teenager became a pawn in a brutal political game that would ultimately cost her life. Branca of Bourbon never had a choice in her destiny, but her personal tragedy would become a stark symbol of the cruelty inflicted upon women in medieval politics. To understand this devastating story, we must first look at the political landscape that sealed a young woman's fate before she even reached adulthood. In 1350, Europe was in a state of turmoil. The 100 Years' War between France and England had been raging for a decade, forcing all European monarchies to choose sides or forge alliances for survival. In this climate, royal marriages were not matters of love, but crucial diplomatic tools for maintaining the continental balance of power. Branca of Bourbon, born in 1339, was the daughter of Peter I, Duke of Bourbon. Her lineage connected her directly to the French royal family, making her one of Europe's most desirable princesses for a strategic matrimonial alliance. From childhood, she was educated to be a king's wife, learning languages, etiquette, and domestic administration, all skills deemed essential for a future queen. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Pyrenees, a complex political situation was brewing around the young King Peter I. He had assumed the throne in 1350 at the age of 16. Peter was a man of contradictory personality, intelligent and administratively competent, but also impulsive, cruel, and obsessively passionate about Maria de Padilla, a Castilian noblewoman who had been his mistress since before his coronation. Maria wasn't just a sexual favorite. She wielded real political power, influencing appointments and state decisions. This worried the great feudal lords, who feared losing access to the king through a woman they considered unsuitable for such a position. Around 1352, the political pressure on Peter to marry officially became irresistible. The Castilian nobles argued that the kingdom needed a legitimate queen who could produce unquestionable heirs and establish advantageous international alliances. It was in this context that Castilian ambassadors traveled to France to negotiate a royal marriage. The choice fell on Branca of Bourbon, not only for her impeccable lineage, but also because an alliance with France offered Castile protection against English ambitions. The dowry offered by the Bourbon family was also substantial, including strategic territories and a considerable amount of gold. The marriage negotiations took months, with Branca, then 13 years old, having no say in her own future. As was customary, she was informed of her engagement only when the negotiations were complete. During 1353, Branca was intensively prepared for her new role. She proved to be an intelligent and gracious young woman, quickly mastering the Castilian language and customs. All contemporary accounts describe her as genuinely enthusiastic about the prospect of becoming queen. In May 1353, Branca began her epic journey from France to Castile, accompanied by an impressive entourage and a dowry that filled 12 carriages. The journey lasted nearly a month, marked by grandiose receptions that must have felt like a fairy tale coming true. But as Branca travelled toward her destiny, Peter I spent his final days as a bachelor in the arms of Maria de Padilla, showing no enthusiasm for the imminent marriage, which he viewed as an unpleasant political obligation. The wedding ceremony in Valladolid on June 3, 1353, was a magnificent affair. Branca, radiant in her wedding dress, seemed genuinely happy. Peter, however, appeared distant and impatient. The wedding festivities lasted 3 full days, with sumptuous banquets and tournaments attended by ambassadors from across Europe. But on the morning of the fourth day, Peter I shocked the entire court by announcing that he was leaving Valladolid for urgent state affairs. In reality, he was abandoning his 3-day-old wife to return to Maria de Padilla in Toledo. Branca's public humiliation was absolute. She became a prisoner in her own palace, with guards ensuring she could not leave without the king's express authorization, an authorization that would never come. Over the following months, Branca's situation rapidly deteriorated. Peter not only refused to visit her, but also drastically cut her royal allowance, forcing her to live in increasingly precarious conditions. Her French servants were dismissed, isolating her from her homeland. Branca's humiliation became an international scandal when it was revealed that Peter had installed Maria de Padilla in the royal palace with all the honors due to a legitimate queen. In 1354, several important nobles rebelled against Peter, using the degrading treatment of the French queen as a main justification. During this civil war, Branca was moved between different castles for her safety, but always kept under strict custody. Ironically, she received more dignified treatment from the rebels than from her own husband. By 1356, Branca's health began to visibly decline. Contemporary accounts describe a 17-year-old who looked decades older, with premature grey hair and a profound melancholy that was literally killing her. Peter, informed of her condition, remained completely indifferent. In 1358, Branca was transferred to the castle of Medina Sidonia, where she was held in even more rigorous custody to prevent French agents from attempting a rescue. The conditions were deliberately austere: a small cell, basic food, and no contact with the outside world. During this final period, Branca developed an intense religious faith that became her only solace. She spent hours in prayer and maintained prolonged fasts that further aggravated her fragile physical state. In the winter of 1361, 8 years after her marriage and at the age of 22, Branca of Bourbon died in the castle of Medina Sidonia. The official cause was a prolonged fever, but everyone knew she had died of abandonment, negligence, and a broken heart. Peter I did not attend her funeral, which was conducted with minimal ceremony. Her death eliminated a persistent diplomatic problem for the king, who could finally marry Maria de Padilla without legal constraints. Branca's death caused outrage in France, and her brother, Louis II of Bourbon, swore vengeance against Peter, actively supporting all his enemies. Ironically, Peter I was assassinated by his own bastard brother, Henry of Trastamara, in 1369, just 8 years after Branca's death. The story of Branca of Bourbon remains one of the most tragic examples of how women were treated as disposable commodities in medieval politics. Her life was sacrificed not for love or personal hatred, but for pure indifference combined with cold political calculation. She was a victim of a system that valued women only as long as they were politically useful. Branca's legacy forces us to confront fundamental questions about human dignity, women's rights, and the personal costs of political ambitions. The teenage queen who was rejected on her honeymoon and locked away until death stands as a silent testimony to the need to value every human life, regardless of its political or social utility.